Hello, my name is Alfredo Sierra, and this is my evidence one of talking about a description of an architectural building. And I'll be talking about the Church of San Ignacio de Loyola, built by Juan Sordo Madaleno in 1961 in Polanco, Mexico, in Mexico City. Okay, so for a little bit of context, the Church of San Ignacio was first idealized in 1951, then completed a whole decade later on 1961. And unlike many ecclesiastical buildings in Mexico, this project embraced modernist principles through its triangular geometry and prefabricated materials. The Church of San Ignacio de Loyola, because of its exterior and materials used, is a perfect exemplification of a modern Mexican architecture. Designed and materialized, the church in the vision of Juan Solo Madaleno can be read not as a artistic nor religious site, but more of a building narrating modernity while negotiating its revolutionary origins. For the first item in question, I'll be talking about regulating lines. Okay, so regulating lines are imposed and often invisible. These lines organize relationships between the building elements and are a prominent theoretical device in Qing, who also echoes Le Corbusier's championing of order and visual harmony. In the Church of San Ignacio Loyola, the regulating lines can be traced both in plan and in elevation. The actual alignment of the main entrance, the congregation of space, and the altar, the stacking of these window articulations, which are here, and the triangular roof of the planes, both intersect and resolve a critical note. These invisible lines create a visual order in order to guide the crowd, but also that disciplines the apparent freedom of the forms, achieving a reassuring perception of order. Furthermore, the regulating lines extend beyond mere alignment of the government of the relationship between materials and geometry. The prefabricated concrete panels in the walls provide divisions of the facade, while the concrete panels are set in rhythmic models that correspond to the proportional divisions of the facade, while the stained glass bands follow a horizontal regulating lines that often guide and prevent audiences to go into the main nave or the altar or into any of the back rooms. Basically, regulating lines are to guide the eye and the audience in a project, but also to ensure that the building generates its purpose, which is grandeur and often worship into a higher power. That's why the eye will always of the crowd will always be in the main nave. For the second point in question, I'll be talking about ordering principles, in this case, transformation. Transformation allows for the adaptation of a canonical model into a new context. The Church of San Ignacio Loyola can be seen as a transformation of both the Christian basilica and the Jesuit model church. The plan and precisional logic are retained, but the articulation of the space, the material, and the light is radically reinterpreted to suit the era's technological possibilities of Mexico's specific context and time. While exemplifying Qing's version of the generative process and analysis and synthesis, in this case, transformation is evident in how traditional the ecclesiastical typologies are, which are these, the main mosaic, but also the steep triangular panels that reinterpreted vaulted canopy of the basilica, while prefabricated concrete panels replace stone masonry and stained glass bands substitute the ornate of the Baroque fenestration. The synthesis demonstrates Qing's idea that transformation is not mere replicational, but more of a creative reconfiguration of a space through the use of materials and techniques from both past and present architectural practices. Visual scale. Visual scale, according to Qing, refers to the perceived size of a element or space in relation to the other architectural components to the human body. In San Ignacio de Loyola's church, this sharp upward steep of the triangular forms imparts a sense of height and drama, yet it remains modular. Paneling and the sequence of fenestration provide a counterweight, breaking down the massive to human appreciation. Thus, the church achieves a monumental presence on the city block, but prevents the overwhelming observer or congruent within. Manufactured proportions are those enforced by industrial processes and standardization, such as modular units like bricks, steels, and tiles. The use of prefabricated concrete and standardized tiles enables a high degree of uniformity and echoes Ching's point that standard sizes and proportions of the factory-produced elements affect the size and proportion of the spacing and other materials as well. In this case, these manufactured proportions are not merely technical, but also establish a consistent rhythm across the facades, while the ceramic cladding modules reinforce the proportional harmony by subdividing large surfaces into human-scaled increments. In Ching's terms, the church demonstrates how manufactured proportions can discipline modernist appreciation and abstraction, while also translating industrial repetition into architectural legibility, which we see in nodes and the geometry of the skeleton of the church. And finally, finally, the degree of enclosure. The degree of enclosure in this church can be considered balanced. The solid walls and the aligned rectangular panels, primarily the windows located along the sides and top of the church, introduce light without completely destroying the enclosure of the building. And the many openings remain in the wall planes. But however, at certain edges and corners, openings visually soften the boundaries, which creates a moderate openness to the surrounding environment. According to Ching, the degree of enclosure depends on how completely a space is bounded by its defining elements, ranging between fully open and fully closed. This church exemplifies a moderate enclosure, while heavy prefabricated panels and concrete uh, establish a strong sense of separation. While also at a spatial condition in which the worshippers feel both safe and sheltered and also connected due to the alignment and openness of the panels and the windows, allowing for Ching's notion and revalidating Ching's notion of enclosure is not only a physical, but also a psychological and symbolical device and boundary. My learnings throughout this activity are the use of APA, the talk in architectural language, and also how to find visual representation in mythologies. The hardest part for me was to pinpoint and communicate such arguments. As you saw, it's not that I don't know my topics or my background, it's just I get really flimsy with words sometimes. And it's hard for me to communicate, and I often stutter myself, but I think I did a decent job. And the hardest part of APA specifically for me was remembering and applying them correctly. There's a lot of sources and a lot of notions and styles that you need to take into consideration. But I think once you remember, you can apply them to life and citations in all of your works. These are my references, and I'm Alfredo Sierra. Thanks for watching my evidence video.